Explain like I'm 5. Why can't prisons just use a large quantity of morphine for executions? In large enough doses, morphine depresses breathing while keeping dying patients relatively comfortable until the end. So why can't death row prisoners use lethal amounts of morphine instead of a dodgy cocktail of drugs that become difficult to get as soon as drug companies realize what they're being used for? The other answers are incorrect. A large dose of morphine will probably kill someone. It also might take quite a while. No one wants to be there for 40 minutes waiting for the heart to finally stop. Also, the victim can vomit or even seize. It's often not at all pretty. The current cocktail includes a paralytic and a medication that makes the heart stop pretty much right away. It's not gruesome to watch, and it doesn't take nearly as long a time as dying of hypoxia does. It can definitely be gruesome to watch. It is gruesome mostly because people who do them are often non-professional, not medics, so they are not as skilled in many of the aspects. As an anesthesiologist, I would be able to perform this flawlessly 100% of the time, as these are similar drugs with what I use day in day out in measured doses. But naturally, like most other doctors, I wouldn't want to have anything to do with the act of killing, even for justified judicial reasons. Doesn't it go against their oath? I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV. Keep in mind that the entire raison d'etre of lethal injection is it's theoretically a quick, humane, certain, and goof-proof death. This applies to everyone involved, including but not limited to the staff who carry it out, the witnesses, media, families of the victim, and the executee, state prison and corrections officials, and yes, even the executee. That's why it was embraced, as opposed to hanging, electrocution, gassing, and shooting. Opioid overdoses are often none of those things. Explain like I'm 5. How do prisons handle criminals who weigh 800 plus pounds? Things like bed size, using the toilet, or showering, getting food, or even getting them into the cell or moving them around the prison all seem like it would take a lot of planning and logistics on the prison's part. There are medical prisons strictly for inmates with medical problems that make them unsuitable for incarceration in a standard facility. That said, you aren't going to stay 800 pounds for long in prison. You're either going to lose weight fast or die. Trying to think of what kind of crimes you could commit at 800 pounds. Leaving your home could be very difficult. Embezzlement. You manage a company or several companies from home. You just do it from a computer. Child abuse material can be downloaded off the internet. You could assault a nurse or maid that comes by to clean your house. That will get you put away. If you have a gun, you could even murder someone that comes within shooting distance. This just makes them sound like a low-budget turret. Depending on the crime, there have been instances where morbidly obese people have been issued house arrest instead of prison because it would be too costly to accommodate them. Look up Stephen Goodman as an example. Explain like I'm 5. How does getting hit in the jaw result in a knockout? I like to watch videos of people fighting from time to time and kept seeing videos of people getting put to sleep via jaw shot. How does this work? How does the brain immediately go unconscious like that? What causes the brain to shut off so quickly? They've done studies in monkeys. Don't read on if you're squeamish. They worked out that you can clamp a skull in place and essentially hit it as hard as you want, and unless there's a penetrating injury, they generally won't lose consciousness. When the head can move, the force required to cause KO is much lower due to the skull impacting the inert brain. This is what happens in most head injuries, and as others have said, the jaw provides a lever for the skull. Nothing like years of engineering school, and you finally land a great-paying job, only to find your first mission is to develop a monkey puncher. Remember those old drug PSAs where they take an egg and say, "This is your brain," then fry the egg while saying, "This is your brain on drugs"? Now put that egg in a jar and shake it. The brain does not like this. It acts as a pivot point. Hit the jaw, swivel the top of the head, brain smacks the inside of the skull. Lights out. Retrospective analysis of boxing knockouts has revealed that they typically are caused by a hook to the side of the jaw, which causes a rotation of the head in the horizontal plane. A shot to the jaw, then, might cause a tremendous amount of force and channel it directly to the nearby brainstem. When you're hit in the jaw, it can create a lot of these rotational forces that can get transmitted to the parts of the brain. Explain like I'm 5. What stops babies, mammals, fetuses' lungs from filling with embiotic fluid while in the womb? Additionally, what triggers a baby once exiting the womb from taking its first breath? Nothing. They get their oxygen supply through the umbilical cord attached to the placenta, attached to the mother's uterine wall. The mother and child essentially share a blood exchange. Babies' lungs are filled with amniotic fluid when they're born. That's why they're often held upside and patted on the back. The first crying jag they experience is them spewing out the fluid. In modern medicine, suction is employed to remove some of it through their mouth so they don't drown. Birth is painful for the child as well as the mother. Babies breathe in utero to prepare their muscles for breathing air. They are inhaling and exhaling amniotic fluid. The higher viscosity of the fluid causes their muscles to develop more rapidly. Just like swimming would make you build muscle tone, more than swinging your arms around with no weights or resistance. Their oxygen comes from their mother's bloodstream. They even get the hiccups. The mother and child essentially share a blood exchange. More specifically, the mother's blood and fetus's blood are separated by membranes that only allow certain things to pass, mostly oxygen, water, food, and some proteins. The baby is able to pass certain hormones through, see gestational diabetes. And some pathogens can cross the barrier. And the placenta, acts as a filter for waste, which is processed by the mother's lymphatic system, kidneys, and liver. Part of morning sickness is due to the sudden onset of waste. Babies are basically parasites. What you have is a parasite, but don't worry. Many people come to love their parasites, name them, dress them up, take them to parties with other parasites. Oh, they do. It's one reason why doctors are happy to see a baby crying. It means they're breathing okay, and the baby will be working that fluid out. My second child was born via C-section and ended up needing a stay in the NICU because of this. When babies are delivered vaginally, the pressure from passing through the birth canal can help squeeze some of the fluid out of the lungs. But C-section babies don't have that benefit. My child ended up developing pneumonia because too much fluid remained in his lungs after birth, and he needed a 10-day regimen of antibiotics to cure him. Explain like I'm 5. Why does the force of the water coming out a sink faucet not strengthen when both hot and cold handles are turned as far as they can go, versus one or the other? Because the total pressure is still the same as the pressure coming into the house. You've just diverted one stream through the hot water tank and then reconverged it at the tap. This isn't the whole story. 2 pipes will still flow more water than a single pipe at the same pressure. The real reason is that residential faucets and shower valves are greatly restricted to conserve water. This restriction is what meters the flow, so having more flow available does not change what comes out of the tap. Any old school faucet or a hot and cold spigot, like used to be on laundry sinks back in the day, you would get a substantial increase in flow by opening both taps, as they have no restriction built in, so the pipes were actually limiting the flow. 2 pipes will still flow more water than a single pipe, but your faucet is a single pipe, unless you're British. When the hot and cold lines converge, the flow rate is reduced to fit into the single actual tap pipe. That's literally what I said. Faucets and shower valves are greatly restricted. It may also be related to the aerator on your faucet. For example, your faucet may have an aerator that allows a maximum of 1.5 gallons per minute, GPM, to pass through. If you turn the cold handle all the way on, and the water pressure is high enough, you may get 1.5 GPM of cold water. Then, if you also turn the hot handle all the way on, you may have something like 0.75 GPM each of hot and cold water. True, there are a couple in my old house where turning the cold tap on completely blocks the flow of hot water. It's because of the difference between the hot and cold pipe arrangement and size. I suspect it might even push cold back up the hot pipe. You have to turn hot on first, wait for it to heat up, and then cold. If you do it the other way round, the hot never heats up. Explain like I'm 5. Why does some gas in space form planets, gas giants, and others just form globs of gas, like the pillars of creation? Admittedly, I'm asking with a lot of ignorance, so I'm not sure my question entirely makes sense. Gas giants in our solar system are just globs of gas, but all clumped up. However, various space photos, like the pillars of creation, seem to be just floating blobs of gas that don't seem to combine into a single spherical entity, planet or otherwise. Why does some float around and some clump into a single sphere? Or are the blobs floating around simply in transit from some stellar event and haven't had time for its minuscule gravity to pull itself into ball? Your last question is on the right track for your answer, with the exception that the pillars of creation are much larger than stars. Much might even be understating it. The pillars are on the order of 4 light years tall, which would be over 27 million times the diameter of our sun. I'm significant, screamed the dust speck into the void. Your fact gave me the same existential terror as reading that C&H comic for the first time, and I mean that completely earnestly. Gas giants and nebulae such as the pillars of creation are on two different scales of sizes and time, and nebulae eventually lead to planets. Planets are bits of matter that have, thanks to gravity, consolidated and compressed down into a much small, denser body. Small being relative here. Nebulae are massive clouds of gas that can span several light years wide, or even several hundred light years. The pillars are about 4 to 5 light years across. For comparison, the orbit of Pluto is about 0.001 light years in diameter, and if we define the solar system as anything that orbits the sun, which includes the Oort cloud that surrounds what we usually think of as the solar system, then the whole solar system is about 2 light years across. The detail you are missing is time. Nebulae are star system factories, but it occurs over the course of over millions or even billions of years. Those clouds are not uniform in their density, and clumps of gas exert gravity on surrounding gas, pulling things together. Over time, these dense pockets will collapse further, eventually forming stars. When a star forms, it will then push the remaining local gas away from itself. In turn, this leftover gas will collapse over hundreds of millions of years in protoplanets, and these combine into planets. Smaller planets will be rocky like Earth, larger ones will be gaseous like Jupiter. The pillars of creation have tons and tons of stars forming and formed within them. The whole formation is about 5 light years tall, long. Well, that's another episode of Explain Like I'm 5 in the books. I really appreciate all of you who made it this far into the video. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, it would really help the channel out a lot if you gave the video a thumbs up, subscribe, or leave a comment down below. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.